Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the ice. Brought to you by Doak Spoke Fuels, Case Financial Group, Toby Hockey, and of course the gentlemen and ladies down at Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy. Tonight we'll bring back an old friend from the Coaches Parlay Show, as well as a fellow Swift Current Broncos fan. I guess you call him an alum because he's been a broadcaster there for over a decade. Now he's getting back behind the desk, perhaps. You never know. He's also started up his own little Mullings, if you will. Some context, some conversations, and some somewhat heated debates with regards to conversations in around southwestern Saskatchewan and all over the world. So please welcome a good friend of ours of ASTV and a good friend of mine as well, Mr. Shawn Mullin. And we're having a little bit of difficulties with Shawn. We'll try to get him here as quick as we can. We've been dealing with some issues back and forth, and there's the man, Shawn Mullin. How are you doing this fine evening, sir?
Excellent. How are you?
Great. Good to see you finally. It's been a couple of months. You took a hiatus, if you will. I mean, no parlay show, but nonetheless, we get to see you in fine form. And how's the summer been for you, Shawn, in southern Saskatchewan?
It's been good. We had an extraordinarily hot summer in southern Saskatchewan. A very hot and dry summer. So unfortunately for the farmers of our community, not necessarily the weather they're looking for, but it's enjoyable in terms of ability to get outside and enjoy a little time with family and friends.
You were able to see bits and pieces of Saskatchewan, some Alberta. I saw some of the trips on the social media. We won't get into those, but one thing I did see was you, a microphone, maybe a couple of weekends ago. Talk to me a little bit what it was like being at the Western Canada Junior Hockey Prospects Camp.
Yeah, I do a little bit of freelance broadcasting. I've done some for ASTV as well. And from what I understand, will be again this coming season with the Swift Current Wildcats, the female 18 and under program here in Swift Current. We did a couple of their games last fall before COVID pulled that away from us. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that. And a chance to broadcast at the camp in Medicine Hat. Some tremendous talent. And what I was really struck by after, 18 months where players really haven't had the chance to do much of that kind of gathering and competition, the intensity was very significant. And I don't know what these camps are normally like. And when you have players out there on the ice in the middle or late part of August, I can't imagine it's always quite as intense. But when you talk to the players themselves, they were saying, people haven't had a chance to see us much. So any opportunity we get right now, we have to give everything we have and bring that intensity level up.
So the intensity caught your eye. What else were some of the big highlights of the time you spent in Medicine Hat?
Just being at the rink again was great, and watching a game and seeing fans in the stands and the energy, the little things you take for granted. I mean, it wasn't a Western Hockey League game with 3 to 8 or 15,000 people in the stands, but it was a crowd cheering their team on, the noise, the feel, the energy, the sounds of skate blades hitting the ice and pucks slapped towards the net. I mean, things you don't think you would have to take for granted, but how little we've got a chance to experience that in person during all of this, just being back there, that's what stood out to me above anything else.
The aura of being in a hockey rink, the chilly feel, the wonderful smell of the Zamboni, hockey gear flowing back and forth. Did you have a chance to talk to some of the scouts, some of the people in the stands at all? And what was their feedback in seeing people and players and the intensity back on the ice?
Yeah, one conversation I had was with Kevin Kaminsky, who runs the program in L'Orange, former NHLer, of course. And he was saying it's a real challenge to get a sense of what's coming into your camp, more so now than ever before. And I think that's particularly true for the junior A teams versus major junior. I mean, the major junior teams, have a pretty defined list, and as they've been following for a while, there aren't as many surprise players to make rosters at that level. I think in Junior A, your camps are a little different, and the net you use to invite players is probably a little wider. So for them, having had very little opportunity to see what's out there and how the players have progressed, whether they're double A, 18 and under players, or triple A players, or just coming out of Bantam, these kinds of camps are really important for them to get a sense of, who should we be bringing to camp? Who should we pencil in to our depth chart? And I think camps this year, and Major Junior too, but in particular at the Junior A level, are going to be as wide open as they've been in years.
There's less, certainty. I mean, obviously we've learned the word fluidity we've learned over the last summer and the last regular season, because everything has changed drastically so quickly. But seeing that, the Junior A programs all over Canada, and including the Western Hockey League, they have set schedules. They have released, they have put together their plan of attack is to see players on the ice, but also fans in the stands. That has to be exciting for not only the larger communities of Saskatchewan, but also the small towns, like you said, in La Ronge, and the towns like Swift Current, Saskatoon, and Regina.
Absolutely. We just went through a winter, where a big part of our social routine was stolen away from us. And that's a thing about hockey that's taken for granted as well, not to overuse.
How excited are you, Shawn, looking forward to seeing the Western Hockey League come back to more normalcy this fall?
Really, I'm for everybody involved. An underrated part of this, and we focus a lot when we see these types of sports shows, but an underrated part of what's going on, when you're looking at the major junior teams, the junior teams, is everybody involved, on a business level. All the people who were laid off, all the people who had their jobs paused for a while, who had their passions taken away from them. Of course, the players, of course, the coaches, but everybody. It's a labor of love to be involved in junior hockey. You're generally not getting paid extraordinary amounts of money to work in a front office on a Friday and Saturday night until all hours of the night, in there at 8 a.m., out of there at midnight. But they had so much of their lives taken away from them and so much uncertainty surrounding their careers and their jobs. So I'm really excited for the people involved at that level, that things are getting back to normal for them. I'm excited for the community. Like I said, it's an underrated aspect of it, how much the hockey game is a huge part of our social interaction during the winter. Saskatchewan and prairie winters can be pretty isolating. It's cold. You're not, guys are out there ice fishing. I'm not saying there aren't people that go outside and enjoy it, but you're not outside as much as you are in the summertime. You're not sitting out by the lake or on the beach or on a patio. And so when you didn't have hockey, it took away a lot of what brought us together. And so I'm looking forward to having that again.
I think Saskatchewan, if you could say something on a license plate, it would say the faithful and the proud. When you talk about their sports teams and their organizations, truly Saskatchewanites, Saskatchewanians, however you want to call them, they are faithful to their hockey operations, their football operations, any sport, any type of cultural entity. They follow them through and throughout, whether they have a 100-0 season or an 0-50 season. To the players, talk about some of those. You and I have talked in great length on other shows about the X factors off the ice. What really is important for a player to possess such that they're showing off their best skate off the ice as well, their mentality, their maturity. Were you able to see some of that as well as seeing it working on the ice over the past weekend at that prospects camp?
One thing I said in the broadcast I was on a few times is, I think if you're a scout or a coach and watching a game like that, if all of a sudden it's a 5-1 game in the third period, that's a good opportunity on both sides of those teams to see, how's that player going to react in this situation? I've seen how they can skate. I've seen how they can shoot, seen how they can pass and their vision. But what's their attitude like? If you're in a game where your team's down big and there's not much chance of coming back, does your effort level change? Does your passion change? Do you start trying to do it all yourself? And I think if you're watching players in those situations, How consistent is what they deliver? And you want to see a guy raise his level if it's 2 minutes left in a tie game to a degree. But ultimately, if I'm a coach, if I'm a manager, what I want from a player is to be able to rely on them moment to moment, that they're going to bring the same type of thing to the game. So I think those moments are moments where you can learn a lot about somebody's character. And you see the players interact with each other. You see how quickly guys can build chemistry with people they don't know. These are not teams that have been playing together. They're thrown together into a mix over a weekend. Some of the guys, but how quickly can they be good teammates? How much do they try to do things just themselves because they're trying to impress scouts, or they get others involved? I think those are ways you can determine the X factors on the ice.
Absolutely. We talked.
They go to the net. There's another one. I heard that over and over again from parents.
When they go to the net, absolutely. Will they stop or will they curl? That's a big 50-50 call, right? You know who drives the net and stops, and those are the ones that usually make the team, boys and girls. Don't do the old Ole curl around the corner. That's not going to fight.
Lots of hitting too.
Was there good?
Oh yeah, there was a lot. There was a lot of physical contact out there. Again, trying to make an impression, show you can play that game.
See, and I always thought they were exchanging laundry, advice. Not what best cleans the blood out of a jersey, how to get the smell out, that kind of thing. Every time you drop the gloves, you wanted to find out how to get the smell out. That was the important thing for me. I must be wrong. Maybe that was an '80s thing.
Yeah. No glove dropping, but
no glove dropping. Okay.
No.
Gone are the days of the buckets off the helm, off the head, and the gloves drawn first. Go to center ice. They can't do that anymore, right?
But you remember what it was like at training camp. One of the things people talked about the most was which new guy is going to step up and drop the mitts and impress, in camp. Who's going to challenge a veteran? Who's going to whatever, right? Like that was a big part of it. It was a chance to stand out for somebody, but that's a no-go anymore these days.
The fans were the no-go during the bubble in the East Division or all across the Western Hockey League in the springtime. Was there any sort of timidness through the players, or were they all just looking forward to getting back on the ice and just shining and trying to get some of that aggression they've built up over the last 18 months?
I didn't ask about any concerns or lack of comfort with anybody in terms of being in a building with other people, but I can tell you, to a man, any of the players that we talked to, they're all just excited to play. They missed playing. They wanted to get out there. They wanted to play as much as they can and show teams they belong. So that's where their focus is. The players aren't thinking about the minutia of how we're handling the return. They just want to get out there.
They just want to get out there, no doubt. Speaking of getting out there, we look forward to having you behind the mic on some of the games as well. I know you're a big Western Hockey League fan. How are your Swift Current Broncos looking, you think, this year?
It's interesting. I had a conversation with someone from the front office, and I'm not sure they totally agreed with me, but I said, of all the teams that had to deal with the results of the pandemic, the Broncos were better off than many. And by that I meant when the league lost playoffs in the 2019-20 season, well, the Broncos weren't in it anyway. In the 2020-21 season, they weren't going to be a playoff team either. So playoffs are a major revenue generator. Those are years that the Broncos struggle to make money. If they're not in the playoffs, they weren't going to be in the playoffs anyway. Obviously, you can limit expenses by not having the games on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure they took a hit, like everybody, a significant hit. But it would have been year 3 of their rebuild. And the first 2 years were years that were incredible struggles, in part because when they made the trades they made to win their championship, they traded away not only the young guys on the team at the time, but the next couple years of young guys. So the team was bad in the first 2 years of the Brockman era, but not bad and young, just bad. So that was the result of what was left in the cupboard. You had to go with a mix of guys who probably, for a lot of them, shouldn't have even been playing in the Western Hockey League. So it didn't give a lot of hope on the ice. What gave hope was the work they did off the ice to make some exceptional trades to turn the players they did have into young talent and draft picks. And I think they did a really good job recouping assets given how little was left. And now last year, the first year, a lot of their new young players got to be integrated into the roster. If nothing had happened, there would have been a little bit, you could already start to feel the grumbling and the unhappiness in the fan base after a couple of really tough years without a lot to be excited about. Was that the ideal environment to bring all those young, impressionable players into the lineup? Instead, they all got to go together, the bubble, bond as a team, play away from that kind of pressure and environment, and just get to know each other, get to know the team systems, go out there and play skilled hockey. They weren't very good defensively in the bubble, but they scored way more. They were way more skilled. And I think being in the bubble allowed them to not focus so much on 2-1 types of games to try to get a win for the fans. They could just go and play and develop skills. And now, having been away from their home rink for 18 months, the fans are hungry for hockey. They want to be back at the rink. The team should be ready to take a step, and more young talent coming into the lineup. And fans will be just happy to be back at the rink. So some of that negativity has been put on pause for a while. I think it's actually a pretty good situation for Swift Current, notwithstanding, of course, the financial losses that you have to deal with from this. But theirs would be less severe than some other places. I feel incredible sympathy for teams like the Saskatoon Blades. That one stands out for me. They spent like 8 years rebuilding after the Memorial Cup. And the years where they're among the elite teams in the league, no playoffs. The Edmonton Oil Kings, the last 2 years, an absolute powerhouse of a roster, no playoffs. Winnipeg
and Brandon. I mean, they two very veteran-style teams, lots of depth, finishing in the top part of that Eastern bubble. They were there, and no playoffs.
Yeah, so that stinks, whereas Swift, that was never going to happen last year. So it didn't hurt them as much as some others. And I think now, in year 4 of the Brockman era, the team is going to be his team, nothing left over. His young guys are in there. And those young guys are still young, so it's not like it's time to contend. But I think with the mix of players they have, a couple of good imports they did sign, 2 good goaltenders, a real good young one and an experienced in Reed Dick and an experienced one in Isaac Poulter. They're a team that's going to be more competitive now, and they're going to be more fun to watch because those young guys who came in are skilled players. Matthew Ward last year had the best, now shortened season, but the best points per game performance by a 16-year-old Bronco since Kimby Daniels in 1991. And that's pretty elite company.
That's way before my time.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's an impressive young man who kind of slid under the radar a little bit in the midst of the Connor Bedard show.
Exactly. Hold on to that conversation because we're going to revisit a bit of that bubble aspect into this regular season coming back right after the break here on the ice. Shawn Mullin joining me here from Swift Current, Saskatchewan, talking about the Broncos, a little bit about the Connor Bedard era, the beginning of it, if you will. Of the teams in the East side, I mean, the teams that were involved in that bubble, did they even think about the fact that, this is, like you said, an opportunity for the young players to get used to Western Hockey League play without fans, without some of the other, normalcies, but did some teams really not benefit very much from only playing a 24-game season, losing a lot of their roster because of aging out or players moving on to the next level? Or, comment about how you think that East Division is going to match up this fall.
Boy, I think on a year-to-year basis in junior hockey, it's hard enough what a league is going to look like, let alone coming off a season like last year, where you had only 24 games, where you had an interesting mix of players, where you don't know what the talent's like coming in because they didn't get a chance to play very much. I don't know. mean, I don't follow the league close enough anymore either, not like I used to really be able to go team to team and say confidently what I expect. I think Winnipeg's going to be good. They've got that young talent that they started to gather coming in with the good mix of skilled players that had already developed and were a good team last year. That stands out to me. I'm really curious about Regina because Bedard is going to be focus of so many around the league. At the same time, we're talking about a 16-year-old, as good as he was. Can he carry a team? Right? That's an incredible amount of responsibility.
We talk about the play in the bubble, how it was more a little open. Less 2-1 games for the fans, more 7-5s, 5-3s, more open scoring. Do you think that trend continues with fans in the stands, or do you think it's going to come back to tighter hockey, more strategic play, more line matching, if you will?
Well, just to finish the thought on Bedard, that's a lot of responsibility for a 16-year-old and a team that was rebuilding too. So they're not quite ready to be what everyone will want them to be, given the focus that's on him. They did get a really good import signed up yesterday or 2 days ago, who was a third-round NHL draft pick. So they'll be interesting to watch. But to your point, yes, I do think the seasons typically start more wide open. The defensive structures aren't as well implemented. The young defenders haven't quite made that leap. I find scoring easier in October and November than it typically is as the season moves along. I think broadly, it'll be a much tighter game than what we saw in the bubble. And I expect some of those numbers that we saw last year might come down a little bit. So, if you saw Bedard put up, the best numbers any 15-year-old has from a point per game standpoint, don't necessarily expect him to now eclipse all the 16-year-old records this year. There's going to be more focus on him, and there's going to be more focus on defense.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think we saw a glimpse of what could have been. It's only a 24-game glimpse. Who knows what would have happened in a full regular season with those talents? I mean, sure, they would have adapted, but I'm pretty sure he would have had a good scoring, no doubt.
Yeah, he'd have done great, but exactly. If October and November are always easier to score because teams are getting used to the league and the pace and the systems they're playing, well, that's really all we got was October, November. So we never got to the point of the year that would have been tighter. On top of the fact there were no playoffs and there was less impetus to play that kind of way. So these guys got a little more opportunity to play, exciting hockey, but there's going to be a tougher grind this year.
Speaking of not a tougher grind, but a different, we'll change the topic just a tad. Mullin's musings. I'm interested to listen to those and read them out. Quite a couple of conversations you've had this month. First and foremost, you brought up two alums, and I like this debate. I didn't chime in on it because I wanted to chime in with you personally. Bryan Trottier versus Joe Sakic. I mean, you made very good comments and very good arguments for both players.
Well, and because typically, if you were to ask, the topic that came up was what athlete had the best professional career that played in your city? So the first guy that comes to mind in Swift is Sakic. He's the most famous of the former Broncos and the one that people think of the most. Maybe there's some recency bias in that, and because he was on the team that had come back from Lethbridge. But Swift has two of the all-time greats that have played for them. Bryan Trottier is as decorated as Sakic, and he played for the Broncos in the 70s and not the late 80s. So that's where they separate. Trottier actually coached Sakic as an assistant on Colorado. So that's a connection for them. But it's a fascinating conversation when you look at the two players. They did play in slightly different eras. Sakic did score a little more than Trottier in his career. Trottier had some better seasons. They were both MVPs. They were both Conn Smythe winners as playoff MVPs. Trottier won 6 cups compared to Sakic's 2. But Sakic played in an era that was maybe a little tougher to score in. Sakic also led Canada to their first gold medal at the Olympics in 50 years as by far the best player in the 2002 Olympics. there's so many different factors, and I think they're both, legends. They're Hall of Famers. They're top 20, top 30 players of all time, maybe. And to have had both of them in Swift Current is pretty special. Try to say who's better, who had a better career, it's awfully difficult.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the only thing I could separate them in their professional career is I'll never forget the meme of Brian Trottier and Stevens chirping at Brian Bellows in a North Stars uniform, 91 playoffs. I don't think Joe Sakic could do something like that.
Slightly different personalities.
Yeah, just slightly, eh? Just a little bit.
I saw Brian Trottier. He's from Val-Marie, so he's not far from here where he grew up. I saw him perform with his band at the opening of an information center at the Grasslands National Park down in Val-Marie. He's a different type of personality. Joe Sakic, a lot more of a reserved guy. So they couldn't probably be any more different in a dressing room like that.
Would you describe Joe as being more polished and Brian a little more rougher on the edges, maybe?
Yeah, probably. Okay. I mean, the difference between a guy who becomes an assistant coach, who's, the one closer to the players, connected to the players, versus someone who's the executive vice president, right?
Absolutely. No, and I have to kind of take Brian Trottier's side only because he shares the same birth date as I do. Not the same year, but the same day. So I'll take that.
I was going to say.
Yeah, you got a couple decades on me, don't get me wrong, but I don't skate like a frog or do that, so we'll leave that one alone. The other one that caught my interest, it was something that's been talked about largely around small communities in Canada. Could Saskatchewan support an NHL hockey team? And is Canada due for the next expansion / change in venue for the NHL?
Saskatchewan is a tough one. When you look at Winnipeg, they're kind of, I think, the threshold maybe, because you have passionate enough fans, a province that supports the team, and even though the community itself is smaller, that passion and the focus of the entire province carries it. But that's 800,000 people. Saskatchewan as a whole only has a hair over 1 million, and the biggest cities are 250,000. So the Riders work really well, but the Riders also draw for 9 home games a year, not 41. And where would you build the 18,000 seat stadium? Saskatoon or Regina? How would you pick it? And Rider games you can drive to in August and September. Hockey games, it's January. So I think Saskatchewan would be there. I think it would be a wonderful experiment. I think it would be a ton of fun. The other question is the corporate community big enough to support it? So I think there's reasons to think that it would be successful, and it would be exciting to see them try. But of all the options that are available to the NHL, it wouldn't be at the top of the list. As for Canada, Quebec City has the building already. The TV revenue that exists in Canada and could exist on both the French and English side would be huge. The population's solid there, in the instant rivalry that exists, they would be fine. Yeah. The big money's in Southern Ontario, and the question as to whether they'll ever get access to that, it runs through the NHL head office and the Toronto Maple Leafs, because there's 9 million people in Southern Ontario as a whole, but 6.8 in the Greater Toronto area. And the Leaf tickets are gone the instant they're available. So is there room for another team there? Absolutely. There's 3 teams in the Greater New York area. Yeah. And I know New York's quite a bit bigger than Toronto, but hockey is not sport number 1 there. This is Canada. You could have 3 teams in the GTA. So the fact that there's only 1, I mean, it's great for the Leafs, good monopoly building, but to be frank, that's a huge wasted opportunity. And where I see that, I don't think the NHL will push for it. Where I see that happening someday is from the Players Union. As partners, the Players Union, with a number of people that come from that area, and just the fact that they benefit from the revenue of the NHL, they're going to one day just finally say, hey, you're being irresponsible here. We should get more money because it's on the table right there for you to take in the GTA, and you're thumbing your nose at that money while the team in Florida bleeds money. Well, the team in Arizona bleeds money. It's right there for you to take. And our salaries are lower because you refuse to fight the Maple Leafs on this issue. And if I'm the union, I would make that a sticking point. If I got to share revenue based on percentages, you have to do all you can to make revenue. And you're ignoring a massive opportunity there.
And it's a topic of discussion that's been under the radar for several years because a lot of people aren't aware of how much that relationship between the NHLPA and the NHL truly is. Because you're right, it's a wasted opportunity. I think Winnipeg deserved, I don't know if they deserve the Atlanta Thrashers, but I think they realized as a community what it was like to lose it and then regain it, and therefore never want to lose it again. That is the one thing that I think Manitoba, as opposed to Quebec City, truly understands. Once you lost something, you don't know what it's like till it's gone. The grass is always greener on the other side.
Well, Quebec lost it too.
Yeah.
And it happened to them. And they watched, if I'm a Nordiques fan, and I watched my team stink for years, and then the second they leave town, they get Patrick Waugh and win the Stanley Cup? Are you kidding? You know, that would stick in my craw for generations.
No doubt. Yeah. Certainly a little bit sour in Quebec City. Mullin's Musings, every week, every couple of weeks, we kind of put something out there?
Every few days. So it's kind of sporadic, but I try to do 3 or 4 a week.
No, it's great to hear. I mean, it's a great little insight because it's that question. It's that making you thinking of why, right? Or how. Mm-hmm. And I always love those questions. Shawn Mullin, we look forward to working with you all fall as well. Keep up the good work as always and enjoy the return of hockey with all of us.
I will, and I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today, and I'm looking forward to more of these conversations throughout the season.
Absolutely. Shawn Mullin, Swift Current native, follower of many great sports, including being a wonderful father, as always, just like I am. Shout out to all the dads getting ready for school. Did you have to go school shopping yet, or you got all the outfits all figured out, Shawn?
I don't want to say that dad shouldn't have to do this, but I happen to be in a position where my ex-wife really likes doing that stuff. Okay. So I'm off the hook in terms of school supplies, but we'll be ready.
I'm happy that the schools give out the lists now, or give out to say, please pay check payable to, and we'll take care of it for you. Those are my kind of ideas of school supplies. So
I also like that because, again, my ex's taste is a little more expensive than me. So when they send it a list, say, this is all we need, then I can say, that's all we need. We did not need a $200 calculator.
No. I'm thinking the song, Just the Bare Necessities, through my head as we conclude this show on the ice. Brought to you by Doak Spokefields, Case Financial Group, Toby, and Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy. Thanks for watching. We'll catch up with you next week. On Tuesday night, we're going to have a great special show with the Dryden GM Ice Dogs. We're hoping if they can get some internet down in Dryden. And take care of yourselves. Have a great weekend before school starts. Labor Day weekend next weekend. Go Blue. Hopefully the Riders can stay in touch, right, Shawn?
Go Red Blacks.
All righty. Talk to you later. Good seeing everybody on ASTV. Take care of yourselves. Bringing more goodness to the greatness. And, of course, stay safe. Take care of your neighbors. Bye-bye for now. Welcome to Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy, your world-class academic and hockey training facility created to maximize each student's athletic and academic potential. Blackjack Stewart Arena, home of the Buffalo, is inside the 46,000 square foot complex, as well as a curling rink and other facilities. The students have a unique combination of successful, well-rounded education at Pilot Mountain Collegiate Institute and the professional hockey training in an encouraging community. The years of experience of on-ice coaching propel our students to the next level, both mentally and physically, in a professional environment.